These are the famous west towers of Westminster Abbey, designed by the architect Nicholas Hawksmoor, completed in 1745, which, by the standards of the Abbey's history, which stretches back for 1,000 years, is actually fairly recent. And I think that's the curious thing about Westminster Abbey. It isn't, in fact, finished. They're about to unveil a whole new tower here, which provides access to this continuous arcade that overlooks the full length of the Abbey, 52 feet up above its floor, which is known as the Medieval Triforium. And I'm quite excited about visiting the Triforium because it's never been open to the public before. And the poet John Betjeman once said that it offers the best view in Europe. My guide to the new Queen's Diamond Jubilee galleries in the Triforium, showcasing some of the Abbey's greatest treasures, is the Very Reverend Dr. John Hall, Dean of Westminster. Could we just have a moment revelling in this view? I mean, it's extraordinary, this. You can see why Betjeman, what does he call it? The most beautiful view in Europe?
Best view in Europe.
Best view in
Absolutely.
Europe, yeah. And this space, tell us about where we are.
We're in the Triforium, which is 52 feet up towards the ceiling. And it's an enormous gallery that goes absolutely all the way around the Abbey. So what you see from the ground floor is just these double lancets with the cinquefoil above. But in fact, it's quite broad all the way around, goes right out to the wall. And at this end, these spaces replicate the spaces of the chapels underneath.
You've raised the best part of £23 million to construct the new tower and create these galleries. Why was that such an important thing for you to do?
It's really about access to the history and to the significance of the Abbey for our visitors. We have an extraordinary set of monuments, things going back, right to 960 when the Abbey was first founded. And people just don't get a chance to have a look at those. There are treasures here which reveal a lot about the history of the Abbey. So if you're a visitor to the Abbey, you walk around, you don't see the place as it were alive, you see it as a monument. You come up here, you're able to see so much more of significance in the history of the Abbey.
I wonder whether we might have a moment to just explore in the galleries here. Perhaps you could pick 2 or 3 objects you're fondest of.
Yes, so this is Henry VII, who was king, of course, from 1485 until 1509. And during his reign, they knocked down the old Lady Chapel, and it's often called the Henry VII Chapel, the Chapel of the Order of the Bath, but it's probably a Lady Chapel, and he and his Queen Elizabeth of York are buried there. So, of course, he ended the Wars of the Roses. He is the first Tudor monarch, he's the father of Henry VIII, and he had an enormous influence here.
As an object, it's very intriguing, partly because you're taken back, however long it is, 5 centuries or so. But it's one of many effigies of kings and queens that the Abbey has.
I think the thing is that the funeral was here, and they were buried here, but you wanted to see some image of them. You wanted to have some idea of what they were like. I mean, nobody would have seen them. But so they were dressed in their own clothes, wooden effigies, then wax effigies, likenesses, probably from a death mask, and they were either standing beside their grave or lying on their tomb.
This stood behind the high altar when the church was consecrated.
In 1269. So this is the third church on the site, 960, 1065, 1269. And you see here this extraordinary image of St. Peter on one end, and there would have been St. Paul at the other end. And what happened to it was that when they got fed up with it and they changed the altarpiece to something else a bit later on, they thought, well, what do we do with it? So they made a box, and this is just one side of the box, for one of these effigies.
Should we move on? Let's see, we should see the tower, because it's almost like an object in its own right.
It is. There we are. So this is the tower itself. And really, because it's tucked in behind this flying buttress of the chapter house, almost the only place you can actually really see it from is the Piers entrance to the House of Lords.
So the House of Lords is just there.
Just the House of Lords.
Where is the Lady Chapel? Is that?
That's there.
That's just this building as well. So
here is the Lady Chapel.
And here is, so actually it's very, well, from this angle, it's extremely slim and elegant, fits into this space.
It's modest. genuinely modest. It's a 7-story tower. But,
As modest as 7 stories can be.
Exactly. And it's very beautiful. In itself, it's very beautiful. And it just fits in, as you say, perfectly naturally.
Tell me a little bit about the design that we see here, because you have these snaking, sinuous, curving lines, and then these points.
It's the rotated square. That's the basic format of it. And I think Ptolemy has decided that he needs to unite it. So these sinuous lines simply hold it together. So it looks rather less like just a sort of boring thing.
When was the last major addition?
Well, I mean, I think probably the last major addition was in 1745 when Hawksmoor's West Towers, he was dead by then, but he designed them, were built. And actually they are the iconic image, aren't they? They are the image of Westminster Abbey, the West Towers, but they weren't built until 1745, which is completely fascinating.
Thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure. Very nice to meet you. Thank you very much.